What's up and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, your weekly look what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheen. I'm here with my co-host Dave Martinson. Dave, finally a lighter week. Kind of. How you doing, dog?
I'm starting to question my own reality, dog. Why did I waste 10 plus hours of my life with Westworld Season 2?
Is it now? This was probably the week I was looking forward to least in terms of having to binge watch television to catch up and talk about it. Legion, I got a little further behind. And I didn't mind binge watching that because I think there's just so much like weirdness to keep you interested. Westworld is just like a slog. Second week in a row, I've used the word slog. I think I'm gonna try to fit that in once a week. So
hell yeah.
Add that to the drinking game. If you are a fan of the show, though, before we jump into everything, please subscribe on YouTube. Go to iTunes and subscribe and leave a comment and review there, rating and review there. Go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod. And you can find all the ways to listen to this podcast and share us with friends. We really appreciate all the help. Dave, you are a major Star Wars fan. I would consider myself a Star Wars fan, but I think that you are probably a bit of a bigger, or at least more knowledgeable Star Wars fan than I am. We talked about Solo. Check that out, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod for a review of that movie. It didn't do great at the box office. That was one of the things we talked about. It was flopped in, terms of a Star Wars movie. And news came out last week that they might be putting some of the spin-off movies on hold. And then other reports came out saying, maybe it's not on hold, but they're licking their wounds a little bit. They're trying to figure out how to release this a little bit more strategically. What's going on with Star Wars here?
Yeah, I mean, basically summed up there. I think Collider kind of broke the original story that everything was put on hold, any spin-off movies, which would mainly entail the Obi-Wan spin-off and Boba Fett spin-off with James Mangold, both of which, again, not confirmed films, but movies that were almost certainly are in some stage of, development, right? And then ABC News kind of press release-ish stuff from Disney comes out that's saying it's inaccurate, and that's not totally true. There's still other Star Wars films in development beyond the expected, formally announced Episode 9 Rian Johnson trilogy and Benioff and Weiss trilogy, as well as the Jon Favreau streaming show. And then Hollywood Reporter kind of followed up with their own digging, their own sources, and kind of got to that point as well. And like, it's not that they've canceled anything so much as they're just focusing on 9, particularly J.J. Abrams, the next movie coming out December 2019, and figuring, I guess rehoning it on how they operate, how they do business, and how they market their movies, and I guess really all that. It seems like it's a pretty broad comment. And I mean, when the whole thing broke, and the headlines are obviously like Obi-Wan movie canceled, or we're using Solo, the movie we didn't want, to not make Obi-Wan the movie we wanted. It's like, again, it's a little confirmation bias for me. Sure. And I think the main takeaway though is like, if they're trying to work on how they operate and improving that, it's a good sign, because there's been a lot of tumult behind the scenes with, Tony Gilroy coming in to finish Rogue One, and obviously Lauren Miller being fired, and Josh Trank was fired off the spinoff years ago, which we assume was Boba Fett. So it's like they can maybe change the way they work with their creatives. I don't see how that's a negative, and focusing on, the main dish, Episode 9, before they work on all the side stories. I don't see a problem with this tactic. A lot of people, depending on who you ask, the fan base is either in ruins or at least a little divided. I mean, Last Jedi, then Solo, back to back in 5.5 months. There's a lot of truth to that. So, I don't really see much of a negative, because again, they've yet to cancel anything that they formally announced. They haven't announced anything beyond that original announcement of movie. So it's any real conclusion, I think, is just pretty premature, but I think it's probably a positive long term.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, because they released Solo, and I think within 6 months after, or not even 6 months after The Last Jedi, it's hard to release 2 movies in a year without the movies being very different in some way. I think that's one of the pluses Marvel has in their universe is that each superhero brings something different, though their stories can intertwine. There's just more interesting and more uniqueness within those stories. Star Wars pulls from a lot of the same stuff. I mean, Solo is an offshoot of the main Star Wars trilogy. It's a story everybody knows. And after you have The Last Jedi, which was, it kind of has, I don't want to say torn the fan base apart, but you know, there's remake The Last Jedi on Twitter, which I mean, what that was hilarious to see, and Ryan Johnson just like dunking on them too is fantastic.
And sidebar on that, it's like there is legitimate fan criticism of The Last Jedi, and there's also the stuff that gets all the attention, all the, you know, sexist and racist stuff that people say about Finn and Rey,
right.
But then all just the stupid entitled fan stuff. And when you do stuff like this, it's you give attention to the morons, you know, right. that are critics and not the people with legitimate opinions. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I mean, I thought that was funny how everyone was, even people that don't like the movie are like, relax, you know, like
right. Yeah, but I think to kind of just finish my point, I think they need to find a way to release these stories, make them interesting. Maybe they go and instead of releasing, you know, a spinoff like Obi-Wan or Lando or Boba Fett, they decide to do a movie about a new part of the universe, expanding the universe a bit, doing something that's going to draw new fans in and something that's going to feel fresh. You know, I have no doubt Star Wars is going to figure this out. I mean, there's no reason to believe they won't. They had one movie that didn't do well at the box office, and it's still not a bad movie. So they're not in trouble by any sense. I think it's with this fan base, any negative news just gets blown out of proportion.
That's for sure. And I think my main takeaway from this is that, like, if they want to make stuff that's like a Boba Fett or an Obi-Wan that some fans really clamor for, and again, there's a lot of fans that really like Solo, and there's a lot of other people that just have no interest in any of these you know, ancillary stories about things and events we kind of already know, people we know, right? They're just not interested in that because it's not like, you know, creatively new. It's just kind of there to add stuff in, but it's not, you know, quote, needed, right? I think what Lucasfilm's new calculus is Solo was not really the second most popular Star Wars character, the most well known, right? Granted, marketing issues, behind the scenes, bad press, blah blah blah. If Solo didn't bring up general audiences to come to the movie, how the fuck is Boba Fett gonna be a blockbuster? So I think what they have to do is they have to change their calculus about expectations. Or a Boba Fett movie, a neo-Western from James Mangold, director of Logan, sounds great. But again, you have to make sure you make that movie, promote that movie, and sell that movie without the expectation that's $1 billion film, because it won't be $1 billion movie, despite being Star Wars. I think now they've learned that Star Wars, the brand, period, isn't enough, you know?
Right.
So that figuring that stuff out, it's important because, again, it's all about the long term. The shit ain't going away. So, but if the spinoffs are, quote, put on hold, perhaps there's not a 2020 movie, because that's the first year we don't have anything officially dated. You'd have to figure that a 2020 film would need to go into production within the next year to make a 2020 release date. So a little premature, but we'll see.
We'll see. Well, why don't we move on to some music here? Dave, tell me what your relationship is to the genre of music jazz. How do you feel about jazz?
Can't say I listen to a whole lot of it. Shout out Louis Armstrong. I saw La La Land. I know what the white people have done jazz. No, I mean Kamasi Washington, I'm only really aware of him through his work in hip hop, work with Kendrick Lamar, most notably. So, but it's funny that I'm actually really interested in the way like he's like jumped around labels. His first label album, The Epic, in 2015 was on Brain Feeder. That's Flying Lotus's label. You know, Unachievers are on that. And his last two records, including this new one, Heaven and Earth, are on Young Turks. And Young Turks is where FKA Twigs, Sampha, Jamie XX. It's a British indie label. So it's kind of weird, like seeing all the circles that Kamasi Washington, a 37-year-old saxophonist, like is in. But yeah, I'm not. Obviously, we don't talk about jazz very often.
Nah, we aren't going to frequent Seb's. That's for sure. But it's okay. We can still appreciate good music when we hear it. And Heaven and Earth. My first thought, God damn, this album is long. But that's kind of par for the course for a Kamasi Although his second album, I forgot to write the name down. It was only like 35 minutes long. It wasn't that long of an album.
Harmony of Difference.
Yeah, that one was a little bit shorter. But yeah, the Epic was like I think 3 hours long. So this is kind of his style, and to say I listened to every single moment of it, not going to be true, just because I didn't have the time. You know, we're not going to be talking about Jurassic World today because neither one of us could make the time for it. In binging Westworld, catching up on this music, living lives outside of pop culture constantly. So
yeah,
Kamasi,
the draft was on Thursday, and that's usually when I like to get these movies out of the way.
Oh yeah, how did you feel about the next draft?
Kevin Knox, that's what I wanted. That's what we're perfect.
There you go. You were glad that they didn't grab Michael Porter, huh?
Yeah, I like my players to have backs.
It's a good thing to have. It's a good start for a basketball player. All right, so Heaven and Earth. What did you think of this album?
I mean, like his, first label album, it's epic, both in scope and scale and what do you call it? Motivation. I think it's impressive. I mean, there's only 2 songs shorter than 6 minutes, several around 10 minutes. So they're long, like, wouldn't call them ballads, but it's like you're on a journey as he just goes to town on that sax and whatnot. And he's really good at arranging his music. So it's incredibly, sounds really good, even if you're not someone who listens to that music like me. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was impressive. But again, I didn't listen to the whole thing, of course.
Yeah, I jumped around. Two songs I kind of want to shout out on this are One of One and the way that it flows into the Space Traveler's Lullaby. Two things I think this does really well is so the first part, which is heaven, the first part of this, which is earth, and it goes into heaven, talking about like the physical and the metaphysical experience you have as a human being. I think that the way that it transitions from those two parts of this album, or of this double album, is really fantastic in this song. And the Space Traveler's Lullaby in particular is just like, I think you said epic was the word for it. And there's really no other way to describe it. It just kind of brings you on this, like, you feel like you're flying through space at moments, and just like in the clouds. It's pretty amazing. Also The Psalmist, which is the second to last song. There's like a back and forth drum duel on that, which I was just like, it reminded me of Whiplash a lot. I was like,
sure.
Like it was fucking awesome. That's probably the best jazz movie of the last, like, I don't know, 3-4 years, in my opinion.
Is it even jazz?
Yeah, he was a jazz drummer.
Was it?
I would almost guarantee it.
Oh shit, I didn't think of it that way. Sure, Whiplash is better than La La Land, regardless of the genre.
I will not fight you on that. Will you ever listen to this album all the way through?
I mean, I'd like to. I'm the kind of guy who doesn't like to have to do anything. Like, if I'm going to listen to one Beach House album, I might as well listen to the other 6. It's just how I operate. I actually really want to go back and listen to the Epic. I haven't really heard much of that at all. But then, he also has 3 self-released albums. Should I listen to those too? We'll see.
Yeah. How far do you want to dive down this hole? You know what the thing is? It's interesting because we've been really honing in on these albums that are shorter and these songs that are shorter. And then he drops this, and it's like, it almost feels like our attention span is not able to hold this in a way. Like, I found myself spacing out at points and coming back.
I mean, how can you not? I'd be curious to see how I'd handle a genre or an artist I really loved, with something this long. And if it was, good. Because again, by all accounts, Kamasi Washington, Heaven and Earth, great record. But I'm only a mild jazz fan to be incredibly charitable. So but yeah, I mean, we always want everyone to be short. So yeah, that's a good point.
Someone that I know that you're a much bigger fan of, Trent Reznor, 9 Inch Nails, man. This is their third, I guess you can call it EP length, although this is about 30 minutes long, so I'm not sure if it's an EP. Bad Witch, follow up to 2017's Add Violence and 2016's Not the Actual Events. Man, this was quite a trip. Trent Reznor sounding probably more raw than he has in a long time.
Sure.
This is like 9 Inch Nails' most lo-fi album that I can ever really remember. He's known to be like a crazy perfectionist. And I think the really interesting thing about this album for me, so you think about Nine Inch Nails, and they really came to fame in the 90s as this goth rock metal band that was really like using dance music to package their songs and become incredibly popular. You know, a song like Closer is one of maybe the best like dance songs of the 90s in a way.
I know you're a Chainsmokers fan, dude. What are you talking about?
I saw someone say that Closer is going to be our generation's Africa by Toto, and in like 30 years all of our like kids
better
and, like,
better nominations for that already. Come on.
I don't know. I was thinking about it. There might not be. What would you say is a better nomination for that?
I mean, there's tons of other quotables, right? Like, in terms of like it's like a maligned, underappreciated song that people then say, "Oh, it's actually really good."
Right.
Later, I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, it is well made for, you know, a computer, but
yeah, I don't hate Closer. I don't hate that Chainsmoker.
Interesting proposition though.
Definitely. But back to Nine Inch Nails. This is not dancey at all. This 6-track album,
lo-fi, like you said.
Yeah. What stood out to you most about this album? What did you like or dislike?
I thought I liked it partially because it was short, but I was kind of stricken by like the vibe. It definitely had its own consistent vibe, and I didn't care for the vocals per se, but I didn't like dislike them and find it gritty or anything. But I think the 2 instrumental tracks, whatever they're called, "I'm Not From This World" and "Play the Goddamn Part."
Yeah,
I felt those sounded so good, and then there was no vocals to like almost distract you from that.
Yep.
So like absolutely. Then when they're separated from songs with vocals, I was like, oh right, there's, you know, Reznor still here. But I thought, yeah, those instrumental tracks definitely stood out to me. The whole vibe.
I actually thought the same thing, is that the instrumentals were almost the parts that drew me in the most. And like a song like "God Break Down the Door," where he only sings for a very little bit, and it's like right in the middle of the song. And he has these like very like weird, like creepy vocals on it. Almost like you said, almost takes you out of it. But just the way he like makes these songs and builds them up is really, I think, not only inspiring, and what he's kind of talking about in this is just kind of this like, I don't know, just like very depressing type music about like life is pretty much shit right now and things. And
right. Yeah, I need to tune those kind of lyrics out.
Yeah, so it's not something that I think I'm going to go back and listen to a lot, except for maybe those 2. And we'll probably put one of those songs on the playlist for the year. I'm thinking "Play the Goddamn Part" is probably my favorite one. But I think it's worth listening to, especially if you appreciate Nine Inch Nails at all. This album is kind of an interesting, I think, bookend to this 3 EP release. I'm expecting they'll do something a little more traditional for their next one, but we'll see.
I mean, I feel it's always interesting to pay attention to a band that's been around as long as them when they're still making stuff that's worth hearing. And again, like their first album's from 1989. So,
right.
You know, the fact that they're doing something that people actually give a damn about still, you know, I think says a lot.
Absolutely. Something I want to talk to you about, something I give a damn about, is the Fade music video. And that was really, I think, the first time I really tuned into Teyana Taylor and was like, oh shit, like this girl is an incredibly talented, great dancer. She's gorgeous. I wasn't even really aware of her singing until that album, and then I went back and started to tune into some of her songs. I can't say I'm a huge fan, obviously, if I just found out about her pretty much like last year. But I was excited to hear Kanye was producing an album for her, and she dropped KTSE, not 7 tracks, 8 tracks. So Kanye really, I don't know, broke the mold on this one. What did you think of KTSE?
I think it's better than 7. That's her debut album. She has 2 tapes in that debut album that came out in 2014. I just re-listened to it this weekend, and it's not that it's bad, it's a little underwhelming. And I think that's kind of the rub with Teyana Taylor, is that she's like a talented vocalist, a good singer, but not like a superb, amazing singer. But I think she is good, and she's kind of been underutilized ever since she's been on Good Music. And when she was on Christmas in Harlem, she was on a few Cruel Summer songs, some background vocals on Dark Twisted Fantasy, but she's overqualified to be in the Fade video. and then to
Right.
have her in the Fade video, you know, kind of being sexualized, and it's like, no wait, but that's Teyana Taylor. Like, imagine if SZA was, you know, Control hadn't come out yet, and SZA was just dancing in Kendrick videos. You know, it's a little above her pay grade, or
Definitely.
or below her pay grade actually. So yeah, to have KTSC finally come out, again, Ye can set a release date 6 weeks in advance and still deliver it late, but that's whatever. Not my business. And I thought there were some cool lyrics on this. That line about you ain't hot, you ain't pop. What's up with you and Ye on the was it Rose in Harlem?
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, she understands that she's more well known for Fade and Amon Chumpert. So I think this is a good sign of growth. But again, like all of these Wyoming records, 7 tracks or 8 tracks, still a short amount of time, when it's under 30 minutes, to really, grab people's attention if it's not flat out amazing. I think this is good, better than 7, but still not, fantastic. But there are some good joints on it.
Yeah, when I was listening to this, I couldn't help but keep going back to Georgia Smith, because I think just the overall vibe of the album was very R&B, soft sounding. Like a song like, let's see, what did I have down here? What was the song? I think, Issues Hold On was like the song to me that I was like, this is the one I think I vibe with the most. And I just like the overall vibe of the album. Just very, it's something I'm probably going to put on if I'm cleaning my house, or if I'm looking to have like a relaxing afternoon while I'm like, I don't know, watching sports or something like that. But it's not an album I think I'm in love with by any sense of the imagination. And I think, going back to what you said about her debut album, I felt kind of underwhelmed. Like, I was really excited to see what she could bring on this, and it was just okay for me. I still thought the production was great. It was very smooth. There were little parts, like I think in Issues Hold On, when you hear like the laser sound, like just jump in, all of a sudden it kind of like jerks you awake on it. But he kept it pretty minimal, I think, to let her try to shine on this. And she had moments, but I don't think this is gonna vault her to any new level of stardom. Yeah,
the last track, WTP, kind of stands out just because it's like has like the weird background noise, and then Three-Way I thought was a little weird just because Ty Dolla $ign like kind of comes in with like twice as much energy as Teyana, and it's a song about three-ways, so it's I thought that was kind of a weird mix. I thought Ye's verse on Hurry, the 4th track, didn't get in the way. It was solid. But yeah, I mean, and I think that's kind of just my thought on the album. It's better than before. I still know she can be better than this. And I think the whole thing about the Wyoming records is how helpful is letting Kanye put everyone in a box with the short run times at the end of the day,
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, now that the Wyoming records have wrapped up, what are your takeaways from this? Like, especially this is like a moment in music.
Yeah, definitely a moment. That's for sure. Well, I think, the clear highlights are, I mean, everything happened with Pusha T. A lot of that's Pusha's own credit, obviously, with the Drake stuff. But Pusha definitely had twice as many records for Daytona that, he just didn't drop. And then Kanye deserves some credit for bringing Cudi back, reining him in, But on the other hand, he deserves a lot of blame for making an album in 2 weeks and putting it out. So, and then Teyana and Nas, underwhelmed or were just okay, depending on who you ask. So it's a lot of ups and downs from this. Definitely a moment, though. The whole, all the release parties, I think, kind of lost their interest to everyone as we got 5 weeks in. But definitely cool, like, evolution of the Good Fridays concept. And the first time, like, people really thought about good music as a label, since Cruel Summer, since 2012. So it's been a while.
Yeah, I agree. I think Pusha, the obvious winner of all of this, a lot of his own doing, but also Daytona and the production Kanye provided on that are just phenomenal. And I think we'll be talking about that as one of the best albums of this year. I think, like you said, Kanye gets credit for bringing Cudi back, but but Cuddy was at every moment, even on Yay when he comes in on Ghost Town. Yeah, he kills it, and that's the thing is I think that they were able to really give like Ty Dolla $ign a lot of shine, really highlight some of these lesser artists, but the ones that we were all really pumped for, Nas, Kanye, Teyana, fell short, and I think that's the drawback of trying to produce something and make something so quickly and kind of manically is that things need attention, things need time, things need thought, and if you're just throwing it out there, you're not always going to hit the mark. So some good, some bad. Definitely a moment, something we'll be talking about the next time Kanye decides he wants to put music out. So look for like 2 more Yeezy clothing lines to drop before that, though. So got some time. All right, we got to do it. Time to talk about Westworld Season 2. Why don't we each say something we liked about this season before we completely tear it apart?
Yeah, so coming into season 2, I was optimistic that with more time, with a more conventional, less troubled production, Joe Nolan and Lisa Joy would make a more compelling season of TV. A lot of times the first season, you iron out the kinks. This is really present on broadcast television. The cast kind of feels itself out and you figure things out. And this is, the prestige show for HBO. It's soon to be their most expensive show once Thrones finishes up next year, and they already renewed it for season 3, and they have grand plans for this, obviously, and there's a lot of good talent involved. And I really had high expectations, and then like we've both alluded to, wasn't really a fan of the season, but I do think there were some highlights. I think overall the show is still really strong at world building overall, in terms of making interesting settings and premises that it often will not do enough with. And then I think when the show does just get really expository, it usually can do that kind of well. The problem usually is, though, that it's a bunch of ridiculous nonsense. But when it does, go down that path, I think it works. And I thought there was actually some really good episodes in this. Riddle of the Sphinx, and then
Katsuya
episode 8.
Yep,
in particular really stood out. And the reason they stood out is those are shows or episodes with they have multiple timelines, but they actually work together. They pay off together. It's a arc that you can understand and gets pays off by the end of the episode, while also still somewhat serving the grander narrative of the season. And Westworld actually shows with those episodes the potential the show has when it's not just trying to be obtuse and confusing for the sake of doing just that. So I think again, like those moments, you're like, why can't we just get more of that? That's what people actually find entertaining.
Yeah, Kiksuya and Akane no Mai are probably the two that stood out to me the most. And the thing about both those episodes is there's a pretty traditional setup. The thing about Westworld that I give it credit for, because I think it's an admirable way to approach TV shows, but I think also is incredibly difficult, is that they're trying to really make nobody the bad guy, but nobody the good guy either. And when you don't really have a side that you're rooting for, or someone that you feel like you're totally behind, it can be hard to get traction for a show. But in those episodes, you know that you're rooting for I forgot, didn't write his name down, but the ghost warrior in
was it Akechi?
Yeah. Akechi, I think it is, right.
Zane McWilliamson from Fargo season 2. Love the actor.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And then Akane no Mai, you know that you're rooting for Maeve, but you're rooting for Maeve's Shogun twin, or her long whatever, same person, different body. It just kind of sets up a different structure, and those are kind of like bottle episodes almost in a way, in a season that in a show that's so dependent on all these interlocking and interweaving stories. And really, I was sitting there watching this finale last night, and I was like, I've literally said to myself 3 times, I have no idea what's going on. Like I was so lost at parts. And I think it's because, one, this show doesn't grab my attention, so I'm not paying as close attention as something like you would The Wire or Breaking Bad, where you're looking for every little detail. But also, it's just, there's so many different things you have to be thinking about. And this is a show that I think we talked about last year, you have to really want to read about this show and learn about this show past watching it. I think in order to really get it. It's that for me, unless the show is really grabs you, which the show doesn't. I'm not down for that right now. But I saw your tweets today. You said Westworld is not good. Back up that take, Dave.
Well, so season 1 is all about the mystery box. You don't realize, or non-Reddit viewers don't understand that there's multiple timelines until the end when it's revealed that, oh wait, Jimmy Simpson and Ed Harris, the Man in Black, and William are the same people in different timelines, right? And the whole build up with Ford, right? And it's kind of all building up to that, the reveal that there's multiple timelines. And then with season 2, I was like, oh, now they can be a little more conventional. Obviously, they'll still have their puzzles and stuff, but I thought they'd be a little more conventional for the sake of telling a better story. No, they have this present timeline, which basically undercuts all of the past timelines because there's no character growth at all. Let's see, Charlotte Hale, Tessa Thompson, an actress we love. She is incredibly one note the whole season because both in the past timeline and in the present timeline, she's still looking for Abernathy, looking for this shit in his head. So there's like no growth, and you already know that she doesn't find him in the past timeline. And speaking to that growth, I mean, Charlotte, Hale, Maeve, Dolores, and William, they don't change all season. William is literally doing the same thing in season 1 as he's doing season 2, playing his demented, game he has within the Westworld. Right. And nothing changes for him the whole season. And Maeve does a lot of stuff. She's kind of pushing the plot in points, but her as a character doesn't really change.
She just becomes a superhero. That's the only way she changes, is she just is able to control people with her mind all of a sudden. Which isn't even explained how she's able to do that.
No, she just starts being able to like hack in via Bluetooth, I think is kind of how we grasp it, which, I mean, again, I don't care about leaps of logic. I just want it to be told in a better way. Right. So I actually am more apt to give things like that a pass. Again, it's a show about crazy sex robots and gratuitous violence. I'm willing to accept that someone could hack remotely via their head. That's not an issue with me. But it's just like, there's just so many like open plot questions that just exist to be questions. Like the whole thing with the Valley Beyond / Forge. What the fuck is the point of that beyond just being a weird question for everyone to figure out? Right. There's nothing compelling about it. And then I was actually really pissed once fucking Ford comes back. And Anthony Hopkins,
I was just laughing.
Still cooking. Age 80, no shots.
Keep getting those checks.
Ford sucks as a character, incredibly fake deep. And now you just have him poisoning fucking Bernard, and you're just wasting Jeffrey Wright all season because Bernard has no idea what the fuck's going on or what he's done the whole time. Right. And it's just like having Ford come back doesn't make anything more clear about Ford's plan. Oh yeah, we get it. He started a robot revolution and he sides with the robots now. We didn't need you to expound upon that further,
Yeah, I hated Ford showing up in this season. I laughed at it, though, because I was just like, of course they couldn't just let someone die on the show. I mean, the whole point about Ford...
He did die, but still having him come back.
He's actually like still a part of this narrative.
He's in the cloud.
Moving forward, he's in the cloud. No one knows in the cloud. Jeffrey Wright, I actually thought, for having a role where he's supposed to be confused and like waking up from like being shut down like constantly in this season, I thought had some of the best moments. Like, I'm never gonna forget, get out of my fucking head. Like I'm gonna use that gif forever, I think. I also think the stuff with Teddy was pseudo interesting because you got to see how changing these people, these bots' personalities, impacted them.
But it was undercut by the present timeline where he died.
Exactly.
Just floating in the water right away. So like it was hard for that to land with me. And I actually thought that was the first like moment of consequences for Dolores. It was like showing like actually it's I guess you could say it's growth for Teddy, but it's, you know, something that he's changing in Dolores' circumstances for once. But because we already had the moment spoiled for us, it only lands so well for the audience.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I don't really have a lot of other thoughts on this. I mean, what do you think of the Delos stuff? I mean, that was kind of a bit of a bottle episode 2, showing how this project kind of came to be. Delos wanting to live forever within one of these robots, and seeing the Man in Black, or William the Man in Black, his relationship with that.
Yeah, well, I thought Peter Mulan was really good as James Delos. I actually thought that arc, again, because that's primarily self-contained in one episode, I thought that worked really well. And like that room, kind of like shades of like 2001 Space Odyssey, I thought that was done really well.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like the show in general, it presents ideas like that, you know, human condition, what is consciousness, freedom. I think freedom's a big theme for this whole season, but it doesn't want to show any of its work. It just wants to, you know, just point your finger at that stuff and say, hey, see what we're doing? But then here's all these puzzles. Stare at that instead. So, and we've said this before, said this many times, but Dolores, I mean, whenever Dolores was on screen, her whole crew, I was just bored, just dull.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. I don't really have too much else to say. This show, I have nothing to root for. My one theory on it is that the whole, you know, the point of the show is to look at the human condition, what it means to be human. And being human is, I guess, one of the, if you really decide to be introspective and try to figure out humanity, one of the most confusing things to delve into and make sense of. I think maybe the show is going for that, just trying to kind of really not make sense at points, and just keeping a mystery, and like the mystery of life, and what does it really mean to be alive. That'd be like the only way I can maybe rationalize the way the show has gone, but it's just been a major disappointment for me. Well, is there anything that could redeem this for you now? Because they're moving away from the cowboys and Indians. You know, they're going to go out into the real world, supposedly. Can this show gain back your trust as a viewer?
Well, they're clearly giving Tessa Thompson seemingly more to do, or more of a central role, because I think everything she was asked to do as Charlotte Hale, partially because of the unnecessary timelines, was pretty one note, no fault of hers. So you know, that gives me hope. But I really don't see this staying like real world that much, just because you have all those hosts that are going to get reset, Hector and Maeve and, you know, everyone else, and we're gonna find our way back in the park. I just don't see how it's the main construct of the show. It's not going to totally go away. And then William is still alive despite getting shot like he was 50 Cent, so he's still there. I'm not really excited about anything he did, because again, his character did not change for 20 hours.
Right, he's a bot now, right? That's the whole thing. He's now one of the hosts.
I mean, again, do I really care that much? I don't know. Whatever. I wanted more of his daughter, to be honest. I thought she was interesting in her, you know, the relationship that she has with her dad, and how her dad became basically a psychopath, and he was more obsessed with, you know, like real world reality of real world, like augmented reality, than he was his actual real life that really mattered. And I thought that was interesting, but they didn't really actually do it. They just kind of brought it up as something that happened.
Right.
So, and the fact that his daughter is back, I guess, as a bot, or we're supposed to think, yeah, opposite. I don't know. That's cool. I actually thought Lee Sizemore grew on me quite a lot this year as an ancillary character.
Yeah.
As opposed to just being a grating dick in season 1. But again, the fact that Dolores is still going to be involved in some capacity, whether it's with Tessa Thompson or not, just gives me pause, because, you know, she should just be the full villain, but because the show starts her out as the protagonist, it can't totally break away from that, despite her being incredibly villainous. So, yeah, in conclusion, it's, you know, I'd like to see what other worlds they have. We know of 3 worlds now, and I think they said there's 6, right? So, you know, the settings, the set pieces should be cool, but this season also had some set pieces that really annoyed me. I think I've seen enough situations where a guy with a P90 gets killed by a guy with a revolver, you know? Yeah. And like in episode, I think 2 or 3, when they attacked the Confederados, and they're like, let's walk in the field like we're British infantry, and we'll attack you in these Jeeps with no doors. You know, it's like
makes no sense.
And I think the action could be better. And
Like
I'm
even
gonna give it a
when
chance season 3, but yeah, I'm just very disappointed in this season and how it ended.
yeah, just even one more thing that really pissed me off when Maeve, you know, when she's like sitting there on the table and they're like about to kill her for good or end her host life, and the guy's like, "There's no pleasure without pain," and turns her pain meter all the way up, and then that like makes her able to like turn every dead robot, like rise them from the dead to kill a guy. I was just like, this show is shit. Like that's such bad, lazy writing and just like a obvious escape. I don't know.
It was unnecessarily obtuse and confusing with a dumb MacGuffin, the Data in Abernathy. Like
Exactly.
Peter Abernathy said. So it's again, like I said, same thing I did season 1 with better effort. You can make the show a lot better. It's just with this concept, this talent, and even this potential after a season, I'm just flabbergasted. This is what you decided was what you wanted to make, you know?
Yeah. Well, sounds like we're both out on Westworld. There's some good TV coming though. Glow season 2 is coming. I started watching Succession, which after one episode, I'm liking, not loving, but I'm liking it. We'll talk about it on the pod moving forward. Anything else you're watching?
Well, I got to start Killing Eve because the Emmy nominations are coming, I think, second week of July. So we have to talk about that. Making way through the Americans still. And then Sharp Objects comes out top of July with Amy Adams on HBO. That looks great.
Yep.
But then this week also, I guess we'll catch up on Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom for next week. And then Sicario 2, Sicario Day of the Soldado comes out. Sans Emily Blunt and Denis Villeneuve. So we'll see how that unexpected sequel turns out.
Yeah, July.
Oh, and the music.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of music next week. We got Gorillaz, we got Drake, we got Florence and the Machine. July is supposed to slow down for music and maybe movies. I'm not sure.
I mean, Ant-Man and Mission Impossible are the two big movies, and there's a few smaller ones. Sorry to Bother You with Lakeith Stanfield comes out.
Pumped for that one.
Raid from Bo Burnham comes out, but it'll slow down for us in July.
Yeah, so we can catch up on some TV then, hopefully. Anything you want us to talk about, tweet at the pod at Nowstalgia Pod. Tweet at myself, Ashton World Peace, and at Dave at Martin Swagger. Again, subscribe to the pod on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod. And from there, you can find it any way you want to listen to the pod. Share us with friends. We really appreciate it. Any last thoughts for the people, Dave?
Question your reality. Don't watch Westworld.
Do not watch Westworld. You're better than that. We love you guys. We'll talk to you next week.